Alright, as everybody's starting to kind of fill in here, my name is Chris Thompson. Welcome to the November Sharatoga TechTalks. We're trying to put this on monthly. Raise your hands if anybody noticed that we were not here in October. Alright, somebody noticed. That's actually pretty cool. So there was a little bit of a scheduling snafu, and we had a couple of presenters fall through. So we kind of redoubled down. So hopefully I've got a really good lineup tonight for everybody. And we will be back here in December. I think it's December 16th, so I'll be sending out that alert tomorrow. So usually what I like to do is talk about a couple of different milestones that we had. So as of this morning, we have 464 members of our Sharatoga TechTalks meetup, which is pretty impressive. That's up from 411 in September. We now have 422 followers. That's up from like 320 in September. And again, the majority of those are all local, which is really kind of exciting that we're growing organically. We still have 15 YouTube channel subscribers. If you remember back in September, we lost one. We had 16. Apparently, these things happen. I don't know who that was, but so I like to just make an announcement. We are recording tonight's meetup. You see the recorder right there. If you don't want to be on the camera, go downstairs. I don't know what to tell you. I don't do audio shots, but we're supposed to just kind of let people know. We do record these. I do a little horrible editing. I do upload it sometime in the next few weeks when I get a chance, and it's on our channel, so I will tweet it out. We basically do all of our evangelizing, all of our messaging through Twitter, and we don't do it very frequently. So if you hear that we're doing a meetup, if you read us on Twitter, and if you have friends or you want to share it, please do. We use the hashtag Sharatoga Tech whenever we're tweeting, so you can check it out. You can go all the way back about a year and a half now. We've been doing that, so we're got a pretty good following, and I definitely encourage you to tweet tonight. And then lastly, for our December event, we have a very special guest, and I say that because it'll be me, and a couple of friends. So we are actually launching, actually I don't know, actually one other person here that's part of the team. We are launching a new website, and I don't want to give away too much about it. It's kind of a community-driven website to try and pull together a lot of the different tech scenes from the 4 different cities that make up the capital district. Been working on this with a number of different people. I see a bunch of people in the audience tonight that we've really been trying to pull this together. It is not a Saratoga-based thing. It just happens to be made by some people in Saratoga. But the vision really is that there are so many different tech events, like Techpalooza that is going on tonight in Albany, that I wish I was able to attend. We actually lost a presenter to that event. It was just bad coordination. So I've actually talked to the CEG. That will not happen again. We are all on the same page, and the vision is that there's enough room on the calendar for everyone. And really, I want to be able to go to those kind of events. And I think that a lot of people from Saratoga should make their way down to Techpalooza, to Jason's Startup Tech Valley, which is held each month. So we're going to try to work on doing that. That's about it. So first up is Jason. He's going to present on a meteor telescope. So big round of applause for Jason, please.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to see this group in Saratoga coalescing. As Chris mentioned, I've been involved in the startup scene of the Detroit region through my role at RPI, but I live in Saratoga, so in some ways my heart is in Saratoga, and the things that we've been doing in Troy have kind of trickled up here, and it's great to do Startup Saratoga the other week, and it's great to see these types of events evolving as a way to grow the wider startup community. So I'm putting on my hacker hat today. I wear a couple different hats as a director of the Center of Entrepreneurship at RPI, professor in analytics, dad, but this is really kind of the fun. This is really my first talk. Let's look at it. Aspiring hacker and so forth. And it's going to be on Meteor and Telescope. And Meteor is something that I think, as somebody kind of re-upping my tech skills, so there's been so much change in the landscape of technology that for many of us, you learn something for a while, then things change, and then it's time to dive in and re-up. And to me, Meteor is a great place to do that. And so one way that people have described Meteor is okay, you might have heard of Rails for Ruby. So Rails is a framework that allows you to develop Ruby applications a lot easier. Meteor, I think, has taken really the concept of a framework to another level. And so they've incorporated things that make it not only easier to build applications, easier to build MVPs, which could potentially get your startup off the ground a lot more quickly and easily. So number one is 100% pure JavaScript. So if you've been looking at, okay, I gotta learn Angular, I gotta learn some other framework to be able to do more of the interactive web applications, you can do that on the server side as well. So it's using Node in the backend, which is really cool. One code base, you've got all platforms. So you're able to, through this, create mobile apps. It's integrated with phone app, so you can directly launch a mobile app from a web app that you created with one line. Open, you can extend it. It's MIT licensed, very quick and easy to develop in terms of building an MVP and getting something out there and launched. So for instance, like one thing, if you wanted to create an application, Meteor creates simple to use. It's going to set up your application. It's going to build a lot of different components in the background. It's going to have a Mongo database that's there. It's going to have a web server that's already launched and integrated and serving your content. It's got a series of command line tools. It's integrated with Angular. It's got its own reactive framework called Blaze. Live Query can take any changes that happen in your Mongo database and get them to client automatically. No polling, no kind of checking your database to see that there is something that's changed. It's got this full package system. So if you're familiar with Ruby Gems, there's a very dynamic package system that allows you to get something out of the box really quickly. You've got a build system that goes through and can take all your CSS, so if you're using Grunt or something like that to compress your CSS and get a file that's ready for production, all that happens automatically with Meteor. It's integrated with Cordova and PhoneGap, so if you want to add an iPhone app, you write add platform iPhone, and it generates all the files for an iPhone. If you want to create an Android app, you add platform Android. It generates all those files. You still have to get those files onto the various app stores to use them, but this type of integration with the web app is great for a mobile product. You've also got a variety of different deployment opportunities. So if you want to get this out so somebody can see it, you really just have to write Meteor deploy, and then the URL that you want to send it to. You can also, in some cases, deploy it with one button on Heroku. And Galaxy is really how Meteor, the company, is making its money by essentially providing a robust framework, so you don't really have to think about deployment once you get at scale. This is addressing a lot of different issues with changes in development style. In many cases, yesterday we talked about, we started with a browser, we hit the refresh button, we might have individual sessions and forms. Now we want these multi-user experiences with dynamic websites that are familiar or similar to what we're used to using with applications that are on a traditional computer or installed in a computer. So Meteor is making the development of these apps a whole lot easier. If you use Trello maybe for managing tasks and boards of features and cases, these types of applications are the ones where you want collaboration, you want real-time drag and drop styles. That's the type of infrastructure that Meteor is providing. So it's got a whole complete tag. What does this mean? There's a lot of things there. In reality, you've got the web, you've got the mobile, you've got integration with the various JavaScript frameworks. You've got building MongoDB database, building ability to do REST API, and other things. SQL is coming on the next features. And so that as you're building your application, you've got all the data that your application might need is set up at the server level and available for your application through something called publications. And you basically just indicate, okay, what am I publishing to the client? And then you can use that data really however you want. And if it gets updated at any time, you don't have to think about those updates. So how have I used this? Again, I'm kind of an aspiring hacker coming back to this. one of the ways to see and really get deep into a framework and technology is to build an application or to kind of work with an application that's already a robust application that somebody's built. And Telescope, if I had to describe it, it's kind of like Reddit in a box. It's a community website that allows you to upload links, upload photos, do comments, keep people in touch with email subscriptions. And what this is an open source licensed software that you can use both to learn Telescope, but also to build applications on top of it. And we went in a spring hackathon. So just some more basics on Telescope. One is got login, including social login. So if you want to just have your application have Facebook and Twitter login, that's already built. Somebody's already figured it out. You can adopt that with how you're using it. You've got roles, you've got admin roles that might be necessary in whatever application, specific admin page, email notifications, theming, and auto forms, so that you set up your data structure and it automatically creates the forms. And so a lot of things that are traditional patterns for when I was building applications in PHP, this kind of almost happening automatically out of bots. So this is an entry we did for a Spring AT&T hackathon called Project Hunt. The idea was actually inspired by having to facilitate the hackathon. We were trying to match people who were doing people associated with nonprofits with the hackers. Say, okay, what are some good projects that people could work on? What are projects that would matter to people in hackathon? And so we put this up there in Telescope. It was a great learning experience. We were able to pretty quickly out of the box configure some small customizations on the type of posts that people do, and a little bit of the styling. This is a separate website. It's all built on Telescope, but it's my kind of next side project. I'm a data scientist. I'd like to get into the business of education on a web scale for data science. So I've had this domain for a long time, analyticsdojo.com, and very easy to put up a styled website that allows you to have videos and some type of scripting model similar to like Railscast or something like that, but for data science. This was something we did as kind of a proof of concept to the RPI students trying to create a community around social engagement and tracking the cool things that students are doing to serve their community. We haven't rolled it out there, but we've been trying to, we see like there's very small differences in the styling. The core concept is the same, but a lot of functionality here just because we're dealing with Meteor, and we've got a lot of the powerful aspects of Telescope right out of the box. There's, again, I mentioned deployment. Deployment's really easy with Meteor. If we want to do toy deployment, just kind of get it on some non-production ready. We can do Meteor deploy and just the URL that you want. For a production deployment, there's ways of doing it in a container and Heroku. It scales, up to a couple thousand users probably. And then Galaxy is definitely an option if you get to more of a serious application. There are a bunch of Meteor communities, and one of my thoughts here is just, I'm interested in this. I'm interested in talking about Meteor learning and continuing my education within this framework. Glad to meet up with others. Is Capital District in Saratoga ready for a Meteor meetup? We've got a lot of other technology meetups, and so if you're interested, contact me after this. Maybe we start with a few people who just go out for coffee occasionally and talk about what they're doing with Meteor. But I think it's one of these kind of paradigm-shifting frameworks where you've got an incredible platform to build applications, and I'd love to have more people in the region with some competencies. So, Twitter handle is Jason Kruzovich. Thank you very much, Chris. You've done a great job with this. I'm sorry I haven't made it to these, but it's great to see that they're here.
Any questions for Jason? Let me rephrase. There are questions for Jason. Who's going to be the first person to ask him?
Right.
Yes.
I want a Node.js meetup in Saratoga.
That could work too, yeah. I'm still trying to get up to speed with Node.js. To me, it's like, Node.js is really, really cool. It seems to be doing some amazing things, and then Meteor is just an extra level of coolness on top of it.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions? All right, another round of applause for Jason. Thank you. All right. Ooh, that's really. All right. Next up is Max. Just give us a second to switch this out.
All right, if you can hear me, raise your hands. If you can hear the words that I'm saying, raise your hands. All right.
Yeah, stay away from the speaker.
Okay, I have a very limited range of motion because if I stand too far to this way, you can't see the projector, and if I stand too far to this way, we're all deaf. So, bear with me. All right, so I'm going to give a talk. The last talk, some of you may have seen that I gave, was really technical, so if you're about to zone out because the last talk I gave was really technical, don't. This talk isn't technical at all. This talk actually doesn't have anything to do with hippos or PDFs or space. One of our designers at my company built this for some other thing that we were doing, and I thought that it would be great to force Chris to put this up on the screen for like 30 seconds. So let's actually jump into the actual talk, not the hippo stuff. So who am I, and much more importantly, why should you listen to anything that I'm about to say? So my name is Max Walker. I founded a company based here in town called Windrush. We raised some funding, we completed an accelerator. We're not a complete failure of startups, as many people end up being. I am a reluctant hipster on Twitter. I tweet very rarely, but when I do, it's often complaining about things, mostly at National Grid. So if any of you work for National Grid, I apologize, but I tweet a lot of harassment at the National Grid Twitter account. And most importantly of all, someone gave me a microphone, so you'll have to listen to me or leave the room for the next 10 or so minutes. So, yeah, it's your problem now. And what does this talk about? So this talk is about how I've made a huge mistake. Or, in fact, I've made 5 huge mistakes, or more than that, but I ran out of slides, starting my company, and the lessons that I learned from making these huge mistakes. And how that actually made my company stronger rather than just pretending it didn't happen and moving on. So let's jump right in. Number one. Number one is, I'm the CTO and I don't need to know how to run a business. And I actually thought like this. And some of you might be going, oh, that guy, real dumb. But no, I actually, when we first started out a couple of years ago, I said, okay, I'm going to be the CTO. The CTO writes code. The CTO doesn't have to understand how a convertible note works, or how a startup works, or how a business works, or how hiring works, or how HR or payroll, or any of those things that actually all businesses need to do. And this was a mistake, unsurprisingly. This was a mistake. But the lesson that I learned from this mistake was that everything is my problem, right? If I'm working for a startup and I'm in a supposedly executive level position, I get to put a C in front of my title. If I get to be a C something something, then I'm probably responsible for at least part of everything that happens. When you have a company that has 3 people or 4 people or 6 people, you kind of have to, everyone has to take some responsibility for everything. And this is really important because people go the other way too. There are people that say, oh, I'm the CEO, I don't even know anything about how code works or how I need to write code. That doesn't work either. You don't need to become a programmer, but you do need to understand the technical side of your business if you are running a technical company. I don't need to necessarily become an MBA. I do need to understand how the business side of my business works. And actually, when everyone works together on these things, when everyone understands everyone else's problems and tries to contribute, the business is much stronger for it. So let's go to number 2. Number 2 is, all we need to do is build a product. All we need to do is build a product, right? That's what a startup is. A startup is a company that builds a product and then sells it to people. like a better mousetrap, right? Everyone remembers better. You build a better mousetrap, they'll come. I think there's some other lesson to be learned there, but just build a great product. So no, in and of itself, this is not a business plan. In fact, build it and they will come is a pretty good way to fail spectacularly, because all that's going to happen is you're going to have a really amazing product that no one has ever even used, and also it probably is an amazing product because if you haven't had a lot of people using it, you don't have the feedback and knowledge and understanding of your market that's required to build an actually amazing product. What you have is an amazing idea, and an idea isn't worth all that much. Execution is what really matters. Let's go to number 3. All we need to do is raise money. Okay, so no, we don't need to just build a product. We need to just get money. We just need to, a startup is basically a machine that whacks the money pinata that is venture capital, collects all the things that fall out, and then goes and spends it on something. I don't know, probably standing desks and ping pong tables. But the point is, all you need to do is raise money, and that's the end goal for a startup. A startup is a machine that raises funding. No. A startup is not a machine that raises funding. A startup is a machine that has to raise funding in order to accelerate its business's growth, in order to operate at a deficit, but funding should never be the end goal. Funding is a mechanism with which to grow your actually sustainable business. Without a product that people love, you can spend all the money you want in the world and you're never going to build a successful business. Sometimes you can spend so much money that you IPO for like $16 billion, as Groupon did, still going to start to tank when people realize that they don't actually want your product. So you do need to build a product that people want. You also need to raise money potentially to grow that business. Money is not the end goal, it's a means to achieve that goal. So number 4, all we need to do is get someone to sell the product. So now we've decided that we do need to build the product and we do need to raise money, but those both aren't the only thing you need to do. So the only thing you need to do now is get someone to sell that. No, it doesn't work. You can't expect someone to sell something that you can't sell yourself. If you built a founding team and you built a product and you have a thing that should be saleable to someone for some reason, just hiring someone to sell it is not going to work. You really need to figure out how to sell it yourself. It doesn't need to be to everyone in the world. It doesn't need to be at enough volume to be profitable. You just need to figure out what makes your product great. How do you explain what makes your product great to others? Get those sales, figure out that process a little bit. Then you automate that process, you start bringing in outside people to help make the sales, and you scale that process up. It can't be the first step when you raise any money at all to hire people to sell your product. And this is a really scary one compared to some of the previous ones because this happens a little bit later. And when you're a little bit later, you have enough going for you that your mistakes actually really hurt. You have raised money, you do have people counting on you to be correct. Early on, when you make the silly mistakes about how I don't need to know how to run a business, there's very little at risk there. Now at this stage, when you start saying, I just need to hire people to sell a product, you're hiring someone, you're asking someone to come work for you under a premise that's inherently faulty. You need to understand how to sell your product in order to hire the right people to sell your product, in order to help them sell your product. And all of this brings me to a pattern. The pattern is pretty obvious, but do one thing well. So as you start a company, you're going to get told, do one thing well a whole lot. And in certain contexts, this is correct. When you're building a product, you want a minimum viable product. You want a product that does one thing well. But you, the founder of that company, you should not do one thing well. The company should not do one thing well. The company can't do one thing well because that would be a mistake. And also not really a company. I mean, it's basically just a machine that does one thing. And that's fine. But what you really need to do, what a company really needs to do, what a founder really needs to do, is do a lot of stuff well. Build a broad base of skills, build a broad understanding of the problem space you're operating in, and learn how to do those things. Have your specialty, absolutely. What? Someone was shouting at me over there. Peanut gallery. You need to do a lot of things well, and you need to be able to use that to build a successful business. You don't want to just do one thing well and end up in a situation where that one thing isn't all you need to be successful. Sorry, microphone troubles. Okay, and now, a shameless plug. So, all of these lessons were learned in the starting of my company, Windrush, which helps people to tell meaningful stories through data. We take boring static reports, charts, and graphs and build interactive, engaging data visualization and stories on the web. And so we're looking for a few things right now. We're currently in the middle of a fundraise. We're also looking for customers. We've got a lot of people loving our product, but we need more, always need more. We need to sell our product, we need to build our product, and we need to raise money. All these things that I just talked about. So if anyone's interested in talking to me about these lessons that I learned or my company, please come talk to me afterwards. I would be happy. I also have stickers, so if you're not interested in actually talking to me but just want a sticker, they're really cool looking. They're designed by someone who I think still isn't back from Australia, but comes to these events normally, Dan. They're really, really awesome looking, so at least come talk to me and pretend you're interested in what I have to say long enough to get a sticker from me and then disappear. And because I knew going in that presentation was going to be too short, I actually have a bonus. So, bonus is something I actually did right from the get-go, and something that I'd be happy to talk to people about if they want to learn from my one actual correct decision, which is, oh wait, sorry, gift interlude. I did one thing right, which is learn about startup financing. If you're trying to build a venture-backed startup, if you're trying to raise money, this is something that you need to know. You need to understand the mechanics of startup financing to some extent. It doesn't need to be your business. You don't need to become a lawyer. You don't need to become an accountant. But it would be good for you to learn these things if you're interested in starting a startup. And I taught myself this stuff. It's really hard to get it right on a very boots on the ground level, which is why you hire a lawyer. It's not very hard to understand the general picture so you know the person you're talking to is trying to trick you. And so when you bring in the lawyer, it's a much easier conversation. You don't have to pay them as much at their exorbitantly high hourly rate. So if you have any questions about startup financing, you can throw that into the mix because it's something that I've sort of educated myself about. And fair warning, I'm not a lawyer. Talk to an actual lawyer before you sign contracts. But I can give you general ballpark advice about the kind of things people will ask you, the kind of terms they will present, and how to make sure those aren't completely crazy before you start talking to them. So now if anyone has any questions, they can tweet abuse at me at Reluctant Hipster. There's no E because that would be too mainstream. It's the most common letter, making it completely worthless. Or they can preferably not tweet abuse at my company's Twitter handle, but you know, all bets are off at this point. And also, this is the email for everyone at the company, but you can also email me. It's just max@windrush.org instead of hello@windrush.org. Or you can shout the things you want me to answer at me right now. Yes?
Hi, so I'm currently focused on marketing business development at my startup. And you mentioned one of your lessons was that you feel that they won't come. So what do you think was one of the biggest lessons in marketing sales in terms of your company? What did you lack?
Yeah, so the question was, what were the biggest lessons in terms of marketing and sales as I built my company? So one is do marketing and sales. And that might sound really dumb, but a lot of people don't do that the first time they start out. They just feel like, okay, well, we'll just build a thing, like I said, and this will be fine. But the actual lessons when we started doing those things were a few-fold. One is find people that really love what you're doing, the product you're making, the market you're selling to, the general ethos of your business, and get them to sell the thing to other people for you. At the early stages, you have very little resources. Finding, you can call them whatever, company evangelists, sales evangelists, whatever. Finding those people and making them really excited about what you're doing and asking them to talk to other people on your behalf is a great force multiplier in the early stages. Another thing is, don't try to cast too broad a net with marketing and sales. Don't try to cast too narrow a net with marketing and sales. If you want everyone to buy your thing, no one will. If you want only people that are exactly 43, live in Saratoga Springs, and run a tech startup to buy your thing, I don't think there are any, so you're going to get no one to buy your thing. Anyway, so the point is, pick a market that's big enough but not so big that no one cares. And that's a big lesson to learn. It's a problem that a lot of people have early on. They either get told it needs to appeal to everyone and they try to appeal to everyone and they fail, or they sold in to pick a niche market, which we did, and we tried to pick a niche market, and that niche market was really long and not big enough. There's a middle ground that's a lot happier. Anyone else?
So I like to hear the debate about what is the definition of a startup, where there could be a t-shirt shop down the street selling American Pharoah t-shirts all summer long. That's a viable business. What differentiates that from a startup in your definition?
So Jason may give me a really dirty look when I say this, but by some people's definition, I think these people might be correct. A startup is any early stage business. A startup is something that's just trying to get oh look, I was right. I wouldn't have failed this class if I had gone to RPI. No, a startup is anything that's trying to get off the ground. When I say startup, when you say startup, when Brian, who poured drinks into me before I came up here, said startup, when Chris says startup, we're talking about something different. We're talking about an experiment in search of a repeatable and scalable business. I think that's from Lean Startup or something like that, but it's basically, it's literally like an experiment. It's not a permanent state. It's something you're trying to do one time or repeatedly until you get it right, and then you build a scalable business and you grow. Small businesses don't fall into that category. Their goal is to be, I find this term kind of derogatory, but lifestyle businesses, they want to be, that's actually a pretty great thing, right? They want to just support your lifestyle and be an awesome thing that you do, but that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is a business that grows and hires and expands and eventually hopefully eats the world, as Mark Andreessen says software is going to do. But I would be interested in hearing if anyone thinks that I'm real dumb for saying that because, again, I like being berated on stage. Also my computer, I give up. Or other questions, or anything in between, just random abuse, it's fine. Just like open mic night.
Alright, so I actually have a question. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of building a team? Like when you pick your co-founders, the importance of choosing different qualities in them, getting along, and how that helps it gel and really ramp up your company.
So Chris asked about the importance of building a team, which I think is sort of projection because Chris is a sole founder. So he's trying to validate his. I'm not going to do crowd work up here. It's not part of the presentation. No. Building a team is extremely important, and that's not just co-founders. I mean, some people end up with many co-founders, which can be a huge problem, or no co-founders, which can be a huge problem. But those things aren't inherently the kiss of death as long as you handle them correctly. But it's also about building people you hire and make sure that the right people for your company, growing your company, and building the right culture for the company. I think that kind of gets maligned a lot. It ends up being code for all sorts of other much less savory things about only hiring people that are 23-year-old males wearing shorts and sandals with socks. But that's not what it's about. If you do it right, what it's about is hiring people that see the vision, they see the long-term vision for your company. And we found that, we managed to, probably partly by accident, hire really great people and work with really great people, but it definitely adds more than just an additional component. It's the whole is more than the sum of its parts, is the sort of saying. But I think having the right people, the right combination of people is incredibly valuable. And this can go beyond just the core team of your business. This can be being in a co-working space with the right other people around, being in a business accelerator with the right other people around, being part of a university with the right other people around, adds a huge multiplier effect to your business's success.
We have time for one more question. In the back. Anyone?
Come on, somebody's got to have something.
Joe.
Tell me I'm wrong. When's my party? So at some point, we're having an office warming party. We just opened our new office over on Van Dam Street. I don't know, and I also haven't talked to my landlord about this, so don't all show up at my office. But at some point, there will be a party, and many or all of you will be invited, depending on how loud the reaction I get from my landlord when I tell him about it is. All right.
All right, round of applause for Max. So I lied. I did a horrible job of introducing teammates, but hopefully you got to meet somebody semi-interesting, or which is not just going to the last 5 minutes you want. So without further ado, Mark is going to talk about a product that's very passionate, and I'm not going to ruin it. So.
John's Way Studios?
One-way conversation. I think it was good.
Hi guys, my name is Mark Apelier and I would like to talk to you about digital tools and open source technologies for the preservation and dissemination of traditional knowledge, and no, there is no way to make that shorter. So I could have put FOSS in there, but people are If you don't know what FOSS is, yeah. A little bit of a background. That's my name. I have two things. I was just explaining over here that I have my day job and then I have what I do. My day job is I'm the Director of Digital Engagement Systems at Excelsior College, which is an online college. But I also run a research project, and it's, you kind of have to call it a passion project, because if you don't, sooner or later your wife starts asking you when it's going to make money. So it's my passion project. And my background is in the humanities. My professional career now is a technologist, which is a weird thing because I find myself in a field. If you do a search for Indigenous Digital Humanities, it will appear all of 11 times in your Google search. That's how niche I am. So what that means is I want to know stories. I'm interested in narrative. I want to know the ephemeral things that fall off your tongue and disappear. And there are other people who are desperate to save those traditions, the ephemeral traditions. And many of them are turning to technology. And so my skeptical mind says, wow, I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Let me research it and spend years doing so. So back in 2008, I started the Ethnos Project, which is an online research project, and have been doing it ever since. Let me, as an explanation for what it is I do with the Ethnos Project, let me tell you a story. So last year, I was in Mexico City as a keynote speaker for a first-year conference on cultural heritage and new technologies. My talk was Shiny Objects and Salvation, Navigating New Technologies for Intangible Cultural Heritage Preservation. And no, there's no way to make that shorter either. So it was taking a look at what's the state of affairs with Indigenous people using tech. And I absolutely refuse to show Indigenous people holding cell phones, which is kind of like Indigenous, tech porn, for lack of a better term. So, you can read all that, do it quick, because I'm about to advance the slide. That's the stuff that disappears. All right, it's the stuff that, sure, you can write a recipe down, but how do you make it? And maybe you have to say that prayer before you make it. And if you don't say the prayer, it's just not going to turn out right. So these are things that are either ephemeral in themselves or have ephemeral attached to them, have stories or dance or sacred prayer or poems or things that are spoken or enacted or ritualized. And they will disappear if a human is not teaching another human how to do it. So this was I'm giving you literally a 3-minute version of my hour-long presentation in Mexico. And this is just kind of an overview, roughly chronological, of the way we have tried to use technology to save Indigenous fill in the blank. So wax cylinders. A guy named Fuchs, Jesse Fuchs, was the first to say, hey, we can record Passamaquoddy songs on wax cylinders, because we all know how long wax cylinders last. So we know that there's a problem with that technology, and we'll see that it's kind of a common problem with all of the technologies that folks are using. The next year, linguists call for TV to save Aboriginal languages. That was 1986. Then we have radio, we have computers and tape recorders and radio. I love that tape recorder. I grew up with one just like that, which dates me. Magnetic data, anybody? All right. This is one of my favorite pieces here. This is a handheld device called the Phrasolator. It was developed by a company for the military. It's a field translation unit. But it's not, it's digital, but it's actually humans saying phrases. Those phrases get recorded, and you have a database of a gazillion phrases, so you can be out in the field, and then there's kind of voice recognition, so you can say, how do I get to the train station? And it will search the database and say it in fill-in-the-blank language. Pretty cool. A guy named Thornton said, I would like to use this for the Cherokee language, and so he actually, the way I look at it is he guilted the federal government into giving him 500 of these units. They're really super expensive, so that was a major accomplishment. Honestly, I don't know where they are today. I look at it and I go, yeah, it's not a cell phone. I could do that with a cell phone app, so I don't know that they're being used anymore. I'll get back to you on that. Video games to help save Indigenous languages. We'll come back to that in a second. text messaging to save indigenous languages, indigenous tap new app to save, my goodness. And then, this one's the one that hurts me most, I think, Facebook to save indigenous language, because that's of course what Facebook is all about. Twitter, talking dictionaries, and you can see then that we are constantly trying to take the technologies that we have in our hands, at our fingertips, that are sitting on our desks at home, and using them to store memories. I mean, we do it ourselves. We don't call it indigenous, we don't call it traditional knowledge, but when you take a photograph of your kid and you store it, that's traditional knowledge for you. And now, I tell you, my first son was born in 2000. I took probably 20,000 million, 100 gazillion photographs of him that are now on a hard drive I cannot boot. So, preservation is always an issue. So here are a couple of projects that kind of embody what I'm talking about. Living cultural story bases. The idea is, let's use QR codes to attach media with artifact. So here is a Chilena from, it's a Fiji. It was designed by a 102-year-old woman after she had a run-in with a panther, I believe. And so it tells a story. Now, 102, hate to be so blunt, she may not be around much longer. And that story that goes with that Chilena is going to disappear. Unless there's some way to grab that story, that ephemeral thing that could very quickly disappear, and somehow fix it and tie it to the item. And so that's what they did. They put this in a museum. They have a QR code. You scan it with your phone, and all of a sudden, there's actually 3 different versions. There's Quechua, Mexican, and English. And here's the old lady, 102 years old, saying, "So, I ran into a panther one day," and she explains the whole design behind the Chilena, and it's quite delightful, actually. So that's just one way of saying, all right, let's build a bridge between physical items that have stories associated with them and the storytellers that embody them. And one of the things that made Cultural Story Bases such a resounding success in the communities that it's been, been deployed is those are young hands holding that camera. You can see they employed young people as the tech ambassadors, kind of adhering to the philosophy that if you want to know how to do something technological, you ask the youngest person in the room. If you want somebody to express the deep, meaningful cultural wisdom of your people, you ask the oldest people in the room. And they did this very well. And so, this is actually, I had stats on the presentation I gave in Mexico, but thousands of children have now gotten certificates of achievement by taking part in this program, and it's scalable, and it's replicable, and it's being used in a lot of South American communities. It's quite beautiful. Just a couple months ago, the Cook Inlet Tribal Council released a game called Never Alone, based on the Canuxia, I can never say it, but it's there, you can see it. And so what they did, you can see this woman, her name is Minnie Gray. She happens to be Robert and Margaret Cleveland's daughter. She remembered a story that he told her when she was a child. That story became the basis for this video game. They got the entire community involved, saying their recollections of Nazareth, telling these stories of what it means to them. They chose a character of a white fox, and each of these people said, this is what this means to me, the symbolism. So it's really cool. When you hit a certain level in the game, which has some pretty cool gameplay, there's a video of somebody from the community telling you why this thing is important. My 11-year-old said, this is really boring, man. I don't want to watch the video. I just skip by them. But the people in the community, they love it. And the kids are so drawn to this because the video game is their language. But they're hearing the spoken language of their people. It's Inuktitut, it's their Inuit, so they're hearing the language of their people being spoken in a medium that is meaningful to the young people. This is a project called Story Beads. The yellow bead has an RFID chip in it The white paper mache box that it's sitting on top of has an Arduino board underneath it, and I don't even know the technology, but they talk to one another, and you can actually speak words into a microphone, and they get transmitted and recorded onto the RFID chip, which means that the bead can contain a story. And to the Bantwane people, these beads have other significance. So you can actually then put into an already culturally meaningful object a story that is also culturally meaningful. You can collect stories and make a necklace and wear them. And whatever you want to, you can go over to the box, take a story bead from your necklace, put it on, and hear the story being told. That's pretty awesome. Except that an RFID chip never meant to store cultural knowledge for a long period. What's the shelf life of an RFID chip? I mean, at best 25 years? I would be surprised if it was only 10, but I don't know. But the idea here is not so much the storage of it, because you can always take the story, put it online, make it MP3, put it onto your platform. But what's really awesome about this is that you have young children sitting with elders, and the children are saying, will you tell me a story that I can put on my story bead? So the technology becomes that go-between, the thing that enables the culture to be handed down to the children. Technology in and of itself, not so important. What it enables the humans to do, awesome. So that's her, that's the Arduino board, that's the white box, moving on. So now, this last year, I wasn't invited to speak at the conference. But that's okay, because I was invited down to the workshops in Oaxaca, which is really awesome. And I don't actually know how to speak Spanish. I'm trying to learn, but it's very hard when you're old. So the workshops were actually working with indigenous community members. There are 15 of them and a couple of other presenters and museum staff here. So about 12 of them are from indigenous communities outside of the city of Oaxaca and in the state of Oaxaca. And the other 3 were in a tourism heritage program, which is pretty cool. And so this workshop, awesome place to hold a workshop. It was in a converted convent. And so here we are surrounded by stone that's like a bazillion years old with our laptops and our high-tech devices. And so I don't want to read this to you because I'm terribly conscious of the fact that I talk a lot, but you can see that you've got people who are interested in what happens when indigenous languages get software. So the Mozilla Firefox project. There's a man who's trying to get it in Zapotec languages. What happens with the Mixtec, where there's like 50 dialects? How do you standardize the language? How do you make software that is in 50 dialects? It's really hard. Roberto did a wonderful how to tell stories with technology, and then Vanya totally took it to town because we went on a field trip to an indigenous community called San Miguel Tequixtepec, and it took me about a week to remember how to say that. And so I'm about to finish up here on my presentation, and then we get to go on a field trip real quick. So here's the problem, and I think we all know the problem. I don't need to labor the point here. Technology is value-laden. It embodies the culture that builds it. So African children of a particular community, they learn communally, they learn by putting their hands on things, they learn by singing and telling stories and dancing, and then you give them 1 laptop per child and say, learn. And that's not how they learn. The technology there has the embedded means of Western ideology in it. And so now you're asking children to sit with a piece of technology by themselves, looking at a screen, not a human, not listening to a story, but touching a keyboard. And so we see how technology does have in it things that don't belong when you bring it into another environment necessarily. Computer-mediated colonialization is the sort of academic catch term for that. Love that. This is a really important slide. Take a picture of it because I'm not going to talk about it. But this is the result of the conversation I had with the community members in the workshop. These are all of the concerns that people had about using technology. Exploitation, authorial control, access, cost, purpose, language, fonts, domains, design, representation, identity. It's amazing. It is every doctoral dissertation distilled into a bullet. And it's important to them that these issues become resolved, because these are some of the biggest challenges that indigenous people are facing as they try to use technology to sustain their traditional knowledge. Here's just a quick example, the cloud. Because you and I know what the cloud is, right? Everyone here as technology people, you know what the cloud is. But the cloud is kind of like the Big Bang Theory. If I were to ask each of you to explain to me what the Big Bang Theory is, you're like, yeah, I know what the Big Bang Theory is. Dust and space and planets and stuff. Yeah, I don't know what that is. And that's kind of what people do when you'd say, describe the cloud. They're like, yeah, the Big Bang Theory, the servers farm, clouds, yeah. So here's a wonderful picture that simply describes what the cloud is, right? Or maybe you should show them this, because, wait, does that look like that? Ooh, this one's a tough one. And so here's the problem. Indigenous knowledge is local, situated within the human community, human relationships. It's oral. We speak it. We hear the sound of the stories. It's experiential. It is subject to change. As soon as you record something and make it into an MP3 file, that story no longer changes. And culture is as much about forgetting as it is about remembering. So this is another complication. Storing traditional knowledge in the cloud is ex situ conservation. It is geographically displaced. It's inert. It's isolated. It exists in a fixed, culturally meaningless form. Those servers will never tell these stories. So a lot of challenges. Here we are on our field trip. Let's go. We're going to San Miguel to Quixtepec. And here we are. Woo. That was what we saw when we got out of the vans. Beautiful church. I'll come back to that church. It's the last thing I saw before I left there. Here's a sign in that church. God wants to talk to you, just not on your cell phone. Perhaps not what you would have expected to find in an indigenous community way out in the middle of nowhere in Oaxaca. So here we are. What we did is we met with some young people in the community that wanted to take part in this. And we wrote down questions, because we're going to take these questions, we're going to go and find elders in the community to share stories with us. None of this prearranged. My group was going to go find the baker. I was stoked about that because my mom's a baker. That's part of my tradition. I was really excited the baker wasn't home. I was totally crushed. But we ended up finding Maria Dolores. She is a weaver, and this community is known for its palm weaving. Beautiful, beautiful palm weaving. And she ended up telling wonderful stories and showing us how to weave. And it was great. You can see the kids who have lived in this community since the day they were born are now using the techniques of storytelling with their digital devices. When they pan, they don't move their bodies, they move the phone. It's very important for zooming, I guess, because otherwise you get your fingers and you're trying to do that and the phone's all shaky and stuff. They learned more about that than I did, clearly. So here we are at the very end doing micro-histories. That was Vanya's part. How to take the things, the stories and stuff that we heard and make something of value out of it. So this is not photoshopped. This is me getting onto the van and looking up and seeing a rainbow. Now I'm not a man of God. But for about 30 seconds I was, and I was like, okay, I stand corrected. Woo! And so, came home. That was a big rush because clearly I have a lot of ideas. It is a passion project. I wasn't lying. I do have a website that has a lot of resources. I put a resource database together. So if you happen to be one of those 11 people that are interested in what I am, you can go to the website and explore. Do you have any questions? Oh, come on, I know you do. Yeah.
What do you need to help move your efforts forward?
Thank you, my wife. I don't know, because I'm not the one to go into a community and say, let me tell you what you guys need. I'm a technologist. I know stuff about technology, and I'm here to solve your problems. It's very hard to get a community to understand that, hey, guess what, I'm a technologist. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, let's have a conversation about it. I'm not a PhD student trying to, crush on a grant before I get my doctorate. I'm not a not-for-profit. I am a me. There are a couple of other people that I've met who help me with the Ethnos project, but there's no formal organization here. So moving it forward, I honestly don't know how to answer that question. That's the same excuse I give to my wife. Honey, I don't know. Yeah.
Here's a money-making idea. There's in the Amazon, there's these small tribes, right? And I know there's a movement to try and get the knowledge of medicine,
right?
All these plants.
Yeah.
And
so
is that something?
Yeah. So the statement question is about tribes in the Amazon who are seeking to protect their ethnobiology knowledge, their knowledge of plants and medicines. And that's actually one of the big concerns that indigenous people of certain places have, because they are afraid of exploitation, of biopiracy, of large companies coming in and stealing their knowledge and profiting from it, and ultimately coming in later and cutting down those forests that gave birth to the plants that allow them to heal themselves, and in their own way, by leaking that knowledge, they become the harbingers of their own doom. So yeah, I think there is a way to help protect them. There are smart people. There's actually a chieftain of the Surrey people who's working, a couple years ago, started a project with Google to map the sacred territories of his people and make sure that the logging companies and the other industrial folks out there knew, hey, here is sacred territory. Now, that seems like a pretty good idea, because now you have, here's the protected land. Problem is, indigenous groups might not actually have a bounded existence. Property and area mean different things to different people. And so as soon as you draw a map saying, here is our land, that land no longer grows or breathes or moves, and you have essentially drawn your own prison walls. So there's always going to be, this is why I'm not a successful presenter, because I'm always like, now here's the dower of doing that technological solution. But thank you, I definitely appreciate that. Anybody else?
Max has a question always.
My question's a little specific, but how does this discipline relate to looking at your products? You give a 30-second pitch of what digital humanities is, because no one.
Yeah, so how does this fit in with, because I called it Indigenous Digital Humanities, but digital humanities is really kind of like the meeting of big data and the arts and literature. So now we can say, hey, we've got the collected works of Shakespeare, Chaucer, and everybody digitized. We can actually do keyword searches. We can find out how many different ways Chaucer spelled naughty words. We can go inside and say, the preponderance of femininity has increased over the years, and we can kind of see pivot points where literature became feminist. So we can do that with data, and we can take computer technology that helps us understand the humanities better. So that's kind of some of the stuff that digital humanities does. It's actually bigger than that, though, because I think you could successfully argue that taking a drone around a pyramid here in Mexico and putting a three-dimensional schematic online for research, that's also digital humanities. So I don't think it's a bounded territory, to use that term again, as well. But how does this fit in? Actually, not very well, because it deals with the ephemeral stuff. It's so much easier to research the stuff that gets written down, that's preserved on clay tablets, that's written into the walls that are, entombed for hundreds of years and vacuum sealed. But it's really hard to do the stuff that disappears.
Round of applause for Mark.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, that was great. So Sharatoga TechTalks is is my passion project. So this it's free to the audience. It doesn't cost me anything to put on. Harvey's provides us this space at no cost. Gives us a bartender. We put up with a little bit of noise from downstairs, but besides that, this is really kind of a passion project for me to kind of bring together people from the tech community, hear a couple people present about things that blow your mind, maybe are really interesting, but you didn't know they were out there in the community, and just kind of spread the word. So if you have a topic or something that you think would be great to present, I get a lot of great repeat offenders up here, Max, Buzz, Joe in the back, a couple people that have presented a number of times, and I welcome them over and over, but I love fresh faces. So I think we have 3 or 4 people for our December event, which is December 16th. I'll be launching that tomorrow, and I'm actually going to launch the next tree, so December 10th, February event. So if you have something that you think might be a good topic, bounce it off me, get at me. I'm pretty easy to find on social media. We've got a co-working space right around the way, so I'm usually in there Monday through Thursday. But we'd love to see a lot of people in the audience up here presenting something. So again, thank you very much for all coming out.